Welcome to Thesilentscript, the podcast where we explore the stories that hide in plain sight, the experiences that seem ordinary on the surface, but reveal something far more complicated when viewed through a different lens. Today, we're examining a silent scripter whose curiosity led them to question one of the most fundamental aspects of being human. Why do people do the things they do?
It's a question that sounds simple, but the deeper you look, the more complex it becomes. Every action, every decision, and every word spoken to another person can leave a psychological imprint. Sometimes those effects are immediate. Other times they unfold over years without either person realizing it.
This silent scripter wasn't just interested in what people did, they wanted to understand why. They listened to people's stories, observed behaviors, and paid attention to experiences that many others might overlook. Again and again, they found themselves looking beyond the behavior and into the person's background. One theme continued to surface: how someone is raised.
Some people are raised in love, where emotional safety becomes a foundation of who they are. Others are raised in survival, learning to protect themselves before they ever learn to trust. And then there are those who experience both. Love intertwined with hardship, creating a reality that's often difficult to untangle. Those early experiences don't excuse harmful behavior, but they can help explain where it comes from.
As the questions became deeper, this silent scripter noticed something fascinating. Many people know what they're saying or doing in the moment. What they may not fully recognize is the lasting psychological impact those words or actions can have on someone else. Intent and impact aren't always the same.
That's the part that stayed with me. It led to an even bigger question. If a person says or does something that has the potential to deeply affect another human being, what responsibility do they have afterwards? And when harm has occurred, whether intentional or not, can compassion still exist?
Can someone choose kindness in response to pain? Can empathy interrupt a cycle that's been repeated for generations? Or does healing begin when we become simply aware of the impact we have on one another?
Today, we're exploring those questions, not to judge and not to excuse, but to understand. Because sometimes the most meaningful conversations begin with the questions we don't usually ask.
This is the silent script. Let's begin. When we ask, why do people do the things they do, we're really asking a question with no single answer. Every person carries a story that most people never get to see.
Exactly. We often judge people by a single moment, a single decision, or a single interaction. But very few of us stop to ask what experiences shaped that moment.
That doesn't mean every action should be excused. People are responsible for the choices they make. But understanding where a behavior comes from can help us respond with wisdom instead of assumptions.
Think about this. Two people hear the exact same sentence. One shrugs it off, the other carries those words for years. The words were the same, their histories weren't.
That's interesting because it reminds us that psychology isn't just something we study. It's something we live every day. Our experiences influence how we interpret the world, how we protect ourselves, how we trust, and even how we love.
Which phrases another question. Is it enough to say, I didn't mean to hurt you, if the impact is still there? Or should awareness of our impact matter just as much as our intentions?
Maybe that's where compassion begins, not with having all the answers, but with being willing to ask better questions. So here's one. How do you think people become who they become?
I don't think there's one answer. I think people are shaped by layers. The family they're born into, the environment they grow up in, the people who influence them, the experiences they have, and even the things that happen to them that no one else knows about.
I agree. Sometimes we look at someone's behavior and assume that's simply who they are, but behavior is often a response to something. It doesn't always begin with that person. Sometimes it began long before they were even born.
Exactly. If someone grows up feeling safe, loved, and heard, they're likely to see the world differently than someone who grows up having to survive every day. Survival teaches different lessons than security does.
And that's not to say that everyone raised in difficult circumstances will hurt others, or that everyone raised with love will always make healthy choices. People still have free will. but our early experiences can influence how we communicate, trust, love, and respond to conflict.
You know what stands out to me? Many people never stop to ask themselves why they react the way they do. They think, this is just who I am, without realizing that some of their behaviors may have been learned rather than consciously chosen.
And that's encouraging in a way, because if behaviors can be learned, then many of them can also be unlearned. It takes self-awareness, accountability, and sometimes difficult conversations, but change is possible.
I think that's where responsibility enters the conversation. If someone eventually becomes aware that their words or actions have affected another person, does that awareness create a responsibility to grow?
Maybe healing begins there, not because we suddenly know everything about another person's story, but because we're willing to acknowledge that every story has chapters we can't see.
Maybe that's the point. We don't always get to see the chapters that shaped someone before they crossed our path, but we do get to decide what kind of chapter we'll become in someone else's story.
Understanding someone's past doesn't erase accountability, and accountability doesn't have to erase compassion. Maybe the healthiest response is learning how to hold both at the same time.
The more we've talked today, the more I've realized that awareness is powerful. Once we recognize that our words and actions can leave lasting psychological effects, we have a choice. We can continue acting without reflection, or we can become more intentional about how we show up in other people's lives.
Because every conversation, every reaction, every moment of kindness or the absence of it has the potential to shape someone in ways we'll never fully know.
So maybe the question isn't just why do people do the things they do?
Maybe the better question is, now that I know my actions affect others, who do I choose to become?
And perhaps that's the silent script we're all writing. One choice, one conversation, one act of compassion at a time.
Thank you for joining us on The Silent Script. If today's conversation made you pause, reflect, or see something through a different lens, then we've done what we set out to do. Until next time, keep asking the questions that lead to understanding, not only of others, but of yourself. We'll see you next time.